Hi everyone, it's Amy Laughlin here. At this moment in time, there's tons of attention swirling about the Epstein files. My heart goes out to the victims, as with all victims of pedophilia and sexual assault. It is hard to listen to what really happened, but it's more important to know the truth, even if it's unseemly at times. I don't like to know that Clinton visited that much. That as a Democrat, and that was my first president that I voted for, I don't like to know that. It's hard, but it's better to know than not know. So I'm going to look at a worst case scenario about the election 2024 and a best case scenario that could either plummet approval ratings for Democrats for a long time to come or raise them significantly. And then I'm going to talk about some options. I do want to say that the evidence is mounting that contradicts the Snopes fact-checking, and I will be dedicating another video later to unpacking why that analysis was insufficient. It seemed on the surface reasonable at the time, but when you look closer, it isn't a good enough gauge. All right, so worst case scenario. The evidence continues to mount that Harrison Walls actually won. Maybe there are a couple of recounts that show the discrepancies that can open up other recounts. Election Truth Alliance keeps doing its good work. Smart Elections US keeps doing their good work. Suddenly the New York Times is interested and there's this huge expose, and it's all in the news now. And all the mainstream media are picking it up. Harrison Walls actually won. It was stolen in a very literal sense. And then the question is, who knew what, when, and why didn't anybody pay attention or do anything? We know that there was a letter to warn to the Harris team, and that it was kind of, I guess, debunked, that the risks were deemed unworthy. I believe that Harrison Walls fell for the grift of election denial, which is to use Democrats' strength against them so that their integrity will get them to take the higher road and not challenge the results and look at the ballots. And it worked. And if that happened, it worked. And if nobody's talking about it, then we're all complicit with that. However, for anybody who knew or was warned and did nothing, and similarly today, if people know and do nothing, that ranges from best case scenario complicity, worst case scenario a cover-up, tantamount to what's going on in the GOP today with the Epstein files. This kind of negligence, of treating our votes with disrespect by not being willing to fight for our votes, by counting the paper ballots, whether in forensic audits or after every single election, is truly unforgivable. This is something we give to you, leaders. And if you aren't going to show them with respect, then you can bet that Democrats are going to come back very unhappy with the results. Because if they really won, then all of the harm to our nation is at their doorstep. If Harrison Walls really won, then Biden didn't wait too long to announce that he wasn't running. Harris didn't do as much wrong as everybody's willing to say. We're wasting time talking about all the stuff if we have that foundational basis wrong. When you have a foundation, and then you have the effects, if you get too busy managing the effects, if your foundation isn't solid, everything's going to come crumbling down later. And in politics, elections are the foundation for everything. So worst case scenario, all of the leaders who are Democratic, at least in Washington, possibly elsewhere, who are doing nothing, who did nothing and are doing nothing now, Harrison Walls in particular, their careers may be ruined. I mean, frankly, were they really up to the task if they can't stand up now? Taking this idea of using your enemy's strengths against them, they could stand up now, following the precedent of Trump himself, and challenge the elections. Now, the difference would be they actually have grounds to do it now, whereas Trump was just lying and denying as usual. And I think that's another thing that I want to address, is the difference between doing something we don't want because it's in pursuit of truth and ignoring everything, which makes us enemies of truth. I'm not going to belabor that issue here, but as you can imagine, down the road, if it's shown that there were cover-ups at any level, if the Democrats were protecting the American people, and by the way, protecting is a synonym for cover-up. If you're for a transparent government, then you don't cover up. You know, you find a way to show the truth to the American people. Now, here's the best case scenario. A lot of people are saying that the Democrats shouldn't define themselves against the Trump administration, and I'm going to disagree with that, because when we are facing a mortal threat, we have to respond in kind to that threat. I admire some of the hearings, and those are going to be great evidence later, although on an aside, you should show them videos of their swearing-in ceremonies and when they were going through the initial process, all the lies that they said. I think showing them themselves is a little bit different than just quoting themselves at them. But let's say that everybody is suddenly like, you know what, the Democrats are like, we really do need to pay attention to this. If people aren't sending tons of letters and petitions to Harrison Walls, which there is contact information online, so if you want to reach out to them, you should. If we can't shake them and rouse them from their denial to do the right thing no matter what the consequences are, because we deserve to know, and as a woman, this is a personal issue for me. If we can't rouse them, all the other Democratic leaders, they could actually challenge the elections whether they won or lost, to pull out that election data so that we could see if there was any funny business going on. That would be a best case scenario. If suddenly people were saying, we are going to reform elections. We hear you, MAGA, that you don't believe that the elections are secure. So we are going to do what you want and make elections more secure by always counting the paper ballots. That can be used in legal claims. It can be used on platforms and speeches. This is an example of using their strength against them. And I am very attached to that idea because we have to get better at that as Democrats. So best case scenario, suddenly, those of us who are wandering around like, was the election hacked? Why aren't they talking about it? Why is nobody looking? Why is nobody doing anything? Suddenly, if we saw people talking about it and doing stuff, approval ratings go way up. Now, I am not going to say that the Epstein file stuff is a total distraction, because it is an opportunity to tear down this man who deserves it. So use it. Don't let it go by. Don't think of it as just a distraction. The other stuff, the charges against Obama and Clinton and all that, those are distractions. So the Epstein stuff is the core of a deeply troubled morality in the president that he conned the American people about. Now, there is a lot of data that shows that people who are conned often can't face it. I've expected that many Republicans who voted for Trump could not face the mistake that they made. I'm wondering now if Democrats are also, in essence, part of the conned audience, that we were conned too. And maybe that's what's holding us back from breaking through and facing that this is a real issue that needs closer study. So the things that we can do, first of all, for the public, we can do Count My Vote protests. We can write to all the involved parties, which are Harris, Walz, our state attorney generals, and our state Congress people. And we can keep hounding them. We could do petitions. I don't think petitions work with states, but they might work with individual leaders, because what we're trying to do is stir their conscience. So the reason that I've written twice to Harris, once to Walz, and twice to the DNC is because with the time limit of the ballots, they could make the fastest legal case with the quickest turnaround, that they have the power to change things really quickly. If we wait for the cases, if we wait till discovery is done in the New York case, if we wait until all the detective work is done, the ballots may not be around. So, of course, we want them to stay around. I don't know if it would be possible. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know. But I had this weird idea. I have these sometimes. What if there was a class action case from the people of the United States not to destroy the 2024 ballots or anything since until we can do exhaustive forensic audits in elections that have not already been hand counted? Because we really need that information. Even if the Supreme Court wouldn't budge that monster from office and replace him with the rightful president, if that in case it was the case that the election was stolen, even if the Supreme Court wouldn't go so far. If you read, the laws about certification, it almost sounds like people who conned, once they get away from it, they're golden. But still, it would call into question potentially all the laws that were signed, all the laws that were proposed and signed by this person. In addition, if we did exhaustive forensic audits and we saw that other representatives, other GOP representatives and senators also were not elected, their signatures could be pulled from all of the bills they signed retrospectively. So there's no telling what something like that could do. But if we put all of our energy in one basket, like the Epstein files, we're going to lose this battle. Democrats are still going to be trying to manage the effects instead of going for the foundation, and their approval ratings are not going to go up. And one last thing, this isn't politics as usual in the US right now. We are barely surviving 6 months of this. How are we going to survive 4 years? This isn't even just about our country. Everything that's happening here is reverberating across the world. So this is not business as usual. We are on the threshold of some kind of end times, at least metaphorically. I'm not going to be all apocalyptic about it, or I'm not going to really belabor the point that we shouldn't have somebody with dementia with his finger close to the war buttons. But we can't use all the traditional methods. Yeah, maybe people do want the Democrats to stop being so detached with their professionalism. Yeah, But you know what? It's really about which battles they're picking and whether they're going to truly stand for us. And if Democrats aren't really willing to stand for our votes, then they aren't standing for us. So we do need to protest the leaders in power now, but we also need to protest the leaders who aren't acting on this issue. And again, I'm smart enough to know that I don't have all the answers on this, that I don't know what the facts are, because we don't have the ballots. We have a type of evidence from the data which is really valuable and legitimate. But without the ballots, what happened is not as clear. So here is my request for you. Reach out to people who can help. Let your leaders know that this is a real issue for you and you want your votes counted in paper ballots. Do what you can to push for 2024 election forensics. Any GOP attorney general is going to say the elections were fair and free, and isn't it great that Washington passed that wonderful bill? Okay, so they are a waste of time. Lastly, there's some question about what Democrats should stand for, and I'm going to say this. Democrats should be on the side of truth because the GOP has proven it's on the side of lies right now. We are lied to so much that we can't believe anything any of them say anymore. But if Democrats are on the side of truth, they have to be fully transparent. And that means if there is an accident in the Midwest somewhere and there's a plume of smoke, you can't protect the people from knowing that there are cancerous particulate matter in that plume of smoke. That is called a cover-up. You can't protect us. That is called a cover-up. What we need to do for the 2026 election is say, even if we're not sure if the hacking happened, that it may have. So the only things that can help with the hacking that was done is landslides in elections. Landslides are not very much affected by this tiny adjustment. Okay, double checking our own ballots, hassling our representatives to do hand counting. Take a pledge, leaders, that you will request hand counting whether you win or lose so that we can get away from this election denial period. Lastly, and I'm going to talk about this, I'm going to talk about this in another video, but we need to begin to understand the difference between facts, understanding, and opinions. Oftentimes our opinions are so dug in, we have them without regard to the facts, and that's not wise. So more on that to come, more on that on debunking the fact-checking of Snopes on the election. I will say that that site is amazing for so many things, but it may have done a real disservice to Harris, Walz, and all of us who voted for her, believing that she was the leader we needed. Thanks for listening. If you did, talk to you later.